And so at this point, I'm going to introduce Scott Miller, president of Bethany College, who is going to take us through the next sessions. Thanks very much, Scott.
Good morning. Welcome to Working Session 1. We think we have a pretty good program together for you. During the past year, I've had the pleasure of serving on the ACUPCC Steering Committee with a talented and diverse group of individuals committed to furthering the mission and purpose of ACUPCC. I've also had the distinction of being one of the only college presidents to sign on behalf of two different institutions during the last 4 years. I was a part of that wonderful, good-looking group that's on the front of the website, that small group that met in Washington in 2007 when I was president of Wesley College, and quickly signed on for Bethany College when I arrived there a few months later. And it's something that really should be a model for everyone. Presidents change every 5, 6, or 7 years, provosts, leaders in different areas, but to go from one institution to another and see that my successor, who's actually in the room here from Wesley College, picked up where I signed on 4 years ago and even addressed the topic more aggressively than I did, is something that we want to see at all institutions. Oops, got ahead of myself. Financing has been identified as a key barrier to implementing sustainability projects on campus, and the ACUPCC Financing Sustainability Committee has been meeting since January to address both the lack of information about available financing resources and also how to encourage the federal government to increase support to signatory institutions for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. Specifically, the committee has set 4 goals. First, better access to information about the best financing strategies currently available. Second, better mechanisms for informing, educating, and supporting decision makers and practitioners on understanding and utilizing a variety of financing vehicles. Third, new financial instruments for colleges and universities. And finally, influencing national and state policy and funding. The committee developed 2 subcommittees to help more specifically in addressing these goals. The Resources and Support Subcommittee was charged with addressing the main committee's first 2 goals, which is better access to information about best financing strategies currently available, and secondly, better mechanisms for informing, educating, and supporting decision makers and practitioners on understanding and utilizing a variety of financing vehicles. The New Financing Mechanism Subcommittee was charged with addressing the final 2 goals, which is new financial instruments for colleges and universities and identifying the barriers to those, and also influencing national policy and state policy and funding that are needed to overcome those barriers. Recommendations from the Financing Sustainability Committee were the following: to create a plan to help a specified percentage of the higher education sector reduce on-campus energy consumption by 50% and achieve 100% renewable energy use by 2022. And that was a hotly contested item on how we came up with percentages and the like, but it's something that the group feels strongly about. Second, to encourage higher education to move away from a model which dictates that energy efficiency and renewable energy projects have to be paid for themselves, and then persuade institutions to allocate funding for sustainability initiatives as a part of the strategic planning process. And third, to endorse plans for the future development of resources on the website. In April, the ACUPCC launched a website intended to become a clearinghouse for information about identifying and securing financing opportunities for sustainability initiatives. The new homepage has the following subcategories: ways to finance energy projects. You may not be able to read all this from the back. This includes, a lot of the current topics on the website, and it's a project that's in motion, continuously being improved and upgraded. Secondly, grant programs. Third, utility programs. Fourth, communicating with governing boards. Fifth, student green fees and other campus sustainability funds. And fifth, financing specific types of projects such as transportation projects. And the Clinton Initiative was particularly of outstanding assistance to us and the subcommittee as this website was developed and tested and run past subcommittee members again. An awful lot of time was put in by the subcommittee getting this ready in just a 2-month period. Finally, the committee is preparing a white paper or a study concept paper to propose enhanced financial assistance for carbon reduction, energy efficiency, and renewable energy projects at campus facilities. And as a result of the study concept paper, there are a number of tasks that the committee and subcommittees are looking at for future study. One is to define the size and scope of the higher education sector in relation to other sectors as a measure of the impact changes in federal policy can have in reaching national, social, economic, and security policy objectives. That's a mouthful, I know. Second, to document current federal assistance programs. Third, to develop a sampling methodology and survey the higher education community to determine what methods are being used, in what ways those methods are adequate or inadequate compared to need, and what projects cannot be deployed due to inadequate resources. And fourth, to make recommendations for changes in federal policy, including is there justification for a specific federal focus on the higher education sector? Is there justification for expanded federal assistance? And if so, what form should it take and how should it be initiated? The committee and subcommittees have been extremely active, and we thank the participants for their outstanding work. This session, working session number 1, is a series of presentations about how a public and a private institution have creatively financed their sustainability projects. Then you'll work in small groups after the presentations to answer the following questions. First, what information would be most useful to help you finance sustainability projects on your campus? Second, what financing mechanisms have been most or least effective at your institutions? Third, what mechanisms are in place or should be put in place to measure the costs and benefits of climate action plans and communicate the stakeholders such as governing boards, faculty, etc.? And fourth, how can we quantify the economic benefits of greenhouse gas reduction and sustainability initiatives within existing accounting systems? Should sustainability-related debt be viewed differently than other forms of debt by accounting firms, creditors, and rating agencies? Those are the 4 big issues that you'll address when we break up into groups after the 2 presentations. This session takes a very special place in the summit. We expect that when you get into the subcategories, there will be robust dialogue as we break out. The world is changing quickly. It's not easy to get a college or university to change quickly. Higher education's often been described as paralysis by analysis. The job of you, as the leader on this topic, is to simplify and clarify the mission and to communicate. Once you have your mission on the topic, repeat it on your campus. You have to say a lot and say it to a lot of people. We encourage you to do more outreach to multiple constituencies, and as leaders, communicate your message to those multiple constituencies over and over again. Our first presenter is Dave McInally, and he serves as Executive Vice President and Treasurer at Allegheny College in Pennsylvania, one of the original signatories of the American College and University President's Climate Commitment. He's been at Allegheny for 25 years, serving as Dean of Students, Secretary of the College, and Vice President for Finance prior to assuming his current position. His responsibilities include budget, finance, investment, marketing, communications, student affairs, athletics, admissions, and financial aid. He has a master's in English and a doctorate in administration and policy studies. Please welcome Dave McInally.
It's been a pleasure being part of the Financing Sustainability Committee with the President's Climate Commitment. I became part of it because of how much I did not know, and was interested in learning what are the resources, what capital is available out there, how are places using it most effectively. Are we doing the right things at Allegheny? What can we learn from one another? And after some time serving on the committee, I probably know more, but feel as if I know less, because it is such a complex field. It's so dynamic. And we realized that one of the ways that we could learn more from one another is to focus on the individual stories, because there are as many ways to finance sustainability as there are colleges and universities who are trying to do it. And so much of today's session is about telling our stories to one another, seeing what we can learn, what themes we can identify, and what kind of principles we can put together to develop more resources, particularly through the website that Scott already demonstrated to you, so that we can convert especially those financial types on all of our campuses who are rightly, but sometimes grumpily, identifying the barriers. And we need to have some tools at our disposal to overcome those barriers. And so my friend Amir and I will each share very brief stories, no more than 10 minutes each, which is why I'm checking my watch to be sure I'm done on time, no more than 10 minutes each, of how we're doing it at our institutions. And just a couple of thoughts about how it worked at Allegheny. This is not a prescription for how private colleges should do it. It's what evolved into our methods for paying for our climate commitment at Allegheny. And it happened in fits and starts. There were successes, there were setbacks, and it's still an ongoing process. But this is how one place did it. Now, we know there are many, many options, as I already mentioned, and there are a lot of resources, and the ACUPCC is serving as a clearinghouse of, I think, some of the most useful of those resources. Now, one issue that we have, and it's not limited to private colleges, but it is characteristic of most of the private colleges I know, is the fact that we don't have experts. That's why I joined to learn more, because I always felt as if I didn't know enough about this field. And Scott already listed the responsibilities that fall under my position. So in addition to being the chief financial officer, I'm expected to know what's going on with marketing and communications and admissions and student life and athletics and more. And so that's my excuse for not being as expert as I wish I were in managed utility contracts or energy performance agreements or whatever it might be. That's why I needed help, and I think that's true at many private colleges and universities. The CFOs wear many, many hats, and they're thinly staffed. Now, there isn't any university or college here who probably feels they have enough help, so I realize that is not the answer to all of this, but it's a special problem for private colleges. We are also dealing with the same tuition pressures that everyone else is. We have a very responsive market. If we price ourselves too high, if our aid dollars are not high enough, we find out right away when enrollment is down the next year. And it makes it difficult to do multi-year planning for capital investments of the sort needed for the sustainability initiatives. So there are a few, at Allegheny, we decided to self-finance. That's not exactly accurate. We're doing a little bit of borrowing, but mostly we decided to take the financing mechanisms that we already used and presumably that we were using with greatest efficiency, the most return for the dollars, for the rest of our college operation, and add our climate commitment into those financing mechanisms. In other words, after studying it, we gave up on the idea that this pays for itself and that it should be financed through some separate, whether it's on or off balance sheet mechanisms that won't affect the college operation. Because not only was that too good to be true, at least in our experience, but in a way, it sets aside an important principle, that sustainability is key to our mission, that it's part of who we are, part of our service and educational mission. And so if we aren't willing to pay for it, the same way we're willing to pay for faculty salaries, for operating a physical campus, for student recruitment, for fundraising expenses, technology, on and on, then to one degree we are not fulfilling our commitments. So we decided to self-finance, and the key to that for us was taking advantage of the governance structure that's already in place. There have been a few words mentioned about that already. And so I won't go through all of this in the interest of time, but we needed to make sure that every participant in that governance system was educated. PCC is ACUPCC is an important resource for that. And of course, educating every single person and getting them to agree on everything is not possible for any of us. But key decision makers did buy in, and that made the difference. Of course, self-financing depends on the quality of your current capital planning and debt structure. If it is broken, then financing sustainability efforts through those methods won't fix it. But of course, we're all working all the time on those financing structures anyway to make them as efficient as possible. So for us, and by the way, and as you will see in this final bullet, we had to be realistic about the cost. Once we gave up on the idea that it would pay for itself, we made great progress. That doesn't mean it won't pay for itself, because this is based on the assumption that energy is not going to grow less expensive. But that is not a quick fix. So these are the 10 steps that we took. We don't actually have 10 minutes for these, and most of them are very familiar to you already. So I will mention a few. We found that on the second one, securing champions across campus was the key element for us. Now, many of you have sustainability coordinators, you have faculty who are champions for this, a lot of student energy, and in this particular group, the president is a champion at each of our institutions. That's not true everywhere. But it's amazing what a pain the CFOs can be. If they aren't willing to lead this effort with every bit as much energy and as inspiring a way as the president is, the CFOs can find 101 ways to scuttle these ideas. I met last week with the CFOs of the Great Lakes Colleges Association, 13 schools very similar to Allegheny, and 6 of them are signatories. And we have a 7th, Antioch, has taken a break and is coming back, and we hope they will be a signatory. So we hope, or will renew their commitment, so we will have more than half. But and I wanted to know from those CFOs, why haven't you joined, for those who haven't? And for those who have, how are you financing it? It turns out all of us are doing the same sort of thing. And I won't get into the reasons why not everyone has joined here, only let you know that I'm lobbying them. I hope you'll join me to get those who haven't joined to sign on. But the CFOs, even for those who are signatories, were, and I've used this word already, I'll repeat it, were grumpy about it. They felt that it wasn't a commitment they could fulfill, and so they shouldn't try. They shouldn't commit to something. Well, they were trying, but they shouldn't publicly commit to something that they would not be able to achieve. And so I think we've talked that through, and we're trying to inspire the group the same way this organization has inspired so many colleges and universities. But the CFO, I think, is the key champion. You all are familiar with the next steps that we took, joining the climate commitment. In our case, appointing a sustainability coordinator. These are not creative financing mechanisms. They were the essential elements of governance that had to be in place to allow meaningful participation across the campus, because ultimately, when that's in place, resources are directed there. When that is not in place, it's very difficult to steer resources to those priorities, to those strategic priorities. We couldn't afford a sustainability coordinator. Do you know what it's like to add a position on our campus? Every department wants to add one or more, and we don't have the money. It's probably true for most of you, so you do know what it's like. Well, in our case, we looked at anticipated retirements, replaced a position in our physical plant staff, created the sustainability coordinator right away. So we were a position heavy for about 1.5 years. When the retirement came, we really did scale back and capture that position, so that now we're at the same number of FTEs that we were before, but it's what we needed to do to create that position. That led to a climate action plan. You're all familiar with that. And then the single most important point I would like to make before wrapping up is that the strategic plan is what we use to guide all of our activities, and resources go there. It was very easy when we developed our new strategic plan. I shouldn't say very easy, but it was easier than we might have imagined to make one plank of that plan, one of 4 or 5 key initiatives to fulfill our climate action plan, because we already had one thanks to our participation in this organization. Now that it's there, it's very difficult to walk away from it. That's the commitment that will make this work for us. The rest rely on using our existing fundraising or our existing financing mechanisms, as I mentioned. At Allegheny, we're fulfilling our climate action plan about half of the cost through our annual maintenance plan. That meant converting a typical deferred maintenance plan into a comprehensive maintenance plan. These are the elements that we include in ours so that every year we're spending on all of these areas, not just on deferred maintenance. It also meant converting our debt structure. We're doing a little bit of borrowing. About 20% of our plan will be funded through that, and about 30% through our typical development fundraising activities. It meant educating the staff in the development office as well. So this is one way to do it internally. It means take the capital structure you already have, combination of operating, capital budgets, debt, fundraising, from both government and private foundations and from private donors, and steering a portion of them to sustainability. To do that, at least in our case, the key wasn't about dollars and it wasn't about creative financing. It was about inclusion in the strategic plan and participation in the existing governance structure. So thank you very much. Let me turn it back to Scott.
Thanks, Dave. Amir Mohammadi is the current Vice President for Finance and Administration at Delaware State University. He also serves on the board for the DSU Foundation as the President of the Housing Foundation and the Controller of the Development Foundation. His affiliations stretch beyond Delaware State University and out into the community. Before his tenure at DSU, he held positions at West Virginia University, the School for Language and Communication Development in New York, Equitable Financial Services in Florida, and Adelphi University in New York. Amir?
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here today. I know I have only 10 minutes, and I'll make sure that I'm within the task. Otherwise, Tony is going to give me those looks. And I also learned this morning about Socrates, so I know what happened to him. So I would be very brief. And also, I want to, a couple of acknowledgments. I want to acknowledge my president, Dr. Harry Williams, my boss, and also a person who has been in Delaware State University for about 17 months. He's done an outstanding job with his infectious energy and contagious enthusiasm. Thank you for your leadership. And he also has focused us on the sustainability. And as a result, I need to introduce my other colleague, Associate Vice President for Development, Ms. Vita Pickering, who happens to be the Sustainability Coordinator. And as my good friend Dave mentioned, one of the things that we do in Delaware State University when we don't have positions, we go to really good people and ask them that to work only a half a day. And we say to them, what 12 hours you want to take? So we ask Vita to really work and help us with the sustainability, who has done a great job. And I also want to really acknowledge another good colleague 2 miles away from us, President of Wesley College, Dr. Johnson, who has done a great job in sustainability. He and Dr. Williams and I serve on the board, the Schwartz Center for the Art, and we are looking at the expenses, and one of the things that we are focusing on is the energy saving for the Schwartz Center, and hoping through that process that what we did in Delaware State, we could do similar work in the Schwartz Center. Since this morning I went over to my presentation and I made sure that I do my presentation brief to 10 minutes. And Dave, my good colleague, said, Amir, you could really have, I will have 7 minutes, so I give you 3 more minutes. But really, as you know, we get excited, and I was calculating to see what I left out, so I have add the 3 more minutes in it. But Dave really articulated the needs, so I'll go back to my 10 minutes because, you know, so I'm trying to make sure that what I leave out, so I don't really go over it. But let me share with you about the good and the bad and the ugly. If I may start with the good. We really have been fortunate to have a governor, progressive governor, in the state of Delaware, the first state of the union, who happened to be very progressive and really championed along with one of our senators who happens to be Senator Harris McDowell. They championed the sustainability and energy saving by passing a law, amended the law of Title 29, which passed 2 years ago as Senate Bill 18, and really is the envy of many states in the country that did not and have failed to pass such a legislation. So if you were going to be talking to the legislators, please remind them that, you know, the state of Delaware has passed some of the laws that really helps with sustainability. Through the task force, I don't go through all of that, but I would like to share with you, the task force created Sustainable Energy Utility Board, and that board is authorized to issue state-backed bonds. And one of the things that we have, all the state agencies, in order to reduce their energy and greenhouse gases, they're part of really tapping to this bond. And we are higher education. We are quasi-state agency, but really is like, in many languages, ostrich looks like a camel but has the shape of the bird. So when time comes, we go over to the ostrich and say, by the way, we want you to run. So wait a minute, I'm not a camel, I'm a bird. And then you say, okay, I want you to fly. I say, no, I cannot fly, I'm a camel. So what we are, we are a quasi-state agency. When this law passed, we said, oh, by the way, we are a state agency. So we went right over and met with the board, and we were one of the very few got the $11.3 million for addressing our deferred maintenance, which is right down here, and reducing our deferred maintenance by almost 28%. I don't go over this. These are the 11.3 million is what we have done. We work with through competitive process with Johnson Control, and we were able to invest 11.3 million. And that 11.3 million, the beauty of this is, and this is part of the good as well, after we pay our debt service in 20 years, we will have $4.87 million surplus, savings that we would not have had if we didn't have such a legislation. So, and at the same time, you will see coming up in the last slide that we are going to be reducing our greenhouse gases by almost 20%, and I'll get to that rather quickly. There are 3 different financing, off-balance sheet financing. By the way, my mother-in-law was, it's not a joke about mother-in-law, it's just, don't get excited. My mother-in-law, I was telling her, she goes, what are you going to be talking? And she lives a half hour away in Washington. And she said, what are you going to be talking about? And I said, we are going to be talking about off-balance sheet. She goes, isn't that what Enron did? I said, no, it's not offshore balancing, it's on off-balance sheet. So I just want to share with you, I'm sorry, there are 3 types, and one of the things that we are working through this legislation is still, we have 2 more weeks, so we'll give you the progress as we go. As a case study, we are going to talk about the bond financing capital is on balance sheet. One of the things that I cannot talk about, few universities across the country have been very successful when they did this type of energy saving GIZA agreements through investment grade audits. They have been able to do it, the packaging of the financing to be on balance sheet off debt calculation. And I know my colleagues who are the finance officers, they know what I'm talking about, because part of the problems that we have is, why is it that, if we have all commonly, we have deferred maintenance, how come we haven't addressed it? And really, that's the evil, is called the impediments is right here, and I'm going to show you. Right now, we have, if we put it on balance sheet, off debt capacity or on debt capacity. Right now, we have, by the way I did it, we have about $140 million, but for the simplicity, I did the total operating revenues for unrestricted funds to be 50. Everything is the same, 57 million, all the way down to where it comes in here. Currently, our maximum annual debt service is about 3.4 million. And then that would be about 10.31%. We have a bond, and similar to most of you, you have debt capacity if you are medium-sized university, and depends what kind of a bond you have got. If it's general obligation bonds or revenue bonds or capital bonds, the MBIA, the insurers, always puts a limitation on your bonds in the bond indenture, and ours is about 14%. You cannot have more than 14% debt to be added beyond your maximum annual debt service. So if we go with that, what's the significance of it? By the way, this is the ugly. This is the ugly. So what's so significant, we know we're going to add $876,000, but if we, on the debt service to pay, if we put it in here, we are okay. But if we put it in here, we are not okay. There are universities who have been able to really get good financial advisors and package it. And I'm working with a couple of those financial advisors to do the same for us, but I cannot really bring a scrutiny to them because they have done a good job and we want to mimic it. So before anybody else finds out, but we will share that with you after we do it. What I like to do is we want to do this, and if our president and our board is focusing us on the growth in STEM. And one of the things we have to do is to have additional building somewhere between 15 to 17 million. If we put it in here on balance sheet, we will not have the capacity. You could see down here is about 6 million, and you can't really have a building for $6 million. Just the design and all of that is more than 6 million. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that we get it, just like few universities, to get it off on balance sheet, but off that capacity. So that's what we are trying to do, and hopefully, I think we have been able to work with our senator and making sure that we have. It's not going to the last. Oh, by the way, these are the good things. I'm not going to go through that. This is really the beauty. I'm not going to talk about only the ugly. We could really, through our endeavors, sequestering CO2 by 145,463 seedlings, growing for 10 years in the urban environment. And every one of them could be accomplished if we address that ugly that I was mentioning to you. What really needs, these are the discussion points. There should be a national discussion. We got to get all those organizations from NACUBO to NAFIO to any organization that could really help to look at these type of bonds as self-supporting bonds. And if we get it as a self-support, because they're going to pay for itself, and the ESCOs have been very good. The ESCOs have been, those who have not met, when they do the investment grade audit, and then sign the GRESA agreements, guaranteed energy savings agreements, if they don't meet the target, they will pay to the universities. So really, we need to have the state laws. This has happened in the state of Delaware, to amend it to include the ability to process debt service payments for energy appropriation. Really, this really should be a model for the rest of the country. Discussion needed with rating agencies to determine not to have this type of investments on the balance sheet. And really, that's the conversation that we should have with Moody's, and some of it quietly is taking place with Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And also external auditors, really uniformly. Right now it's not uniform. It's like a frisbee. You send it out, somebody catches it, and the rest are sitting in there. What happened to the frisbee? So it's really one of those that we need to get external auditors uniformly accept this because the chief financial officers are really going, especially in the small and medium-sized universities that don't have as much resources, they are struggling with that. And also, as you could see, the last one, if we are not able to do any of these things, and you could see I'm getting a little mad, is record the contingent receivables that due through the guarantees as part of the receivables for the university, because the ESCOs are paying, and I know Johnson Control and a number of other ESCO companies have paid when they didn't meet the guaranteed savings, have paid the universities. So we need to modernize these accounting principles that shows, okay, if you cannot do this here, then these are receivables to the university, then you should include it in a debt capacity. That really concludes my my remarks, and I also want to share with you, I heard loud and clear, you articulated rather nicely the AA and the S. I have referred to it on a AAA, affordability, accessibility, and accountability in higher education in the areas of from the White House to the Congress to all across the country is being questioned, and we really cannot address the tuition and fees to keep increasing because the appropriation is going so that we could address the deferred maintenance by putting it on the back of the students. So really, it's one of those, we're not asking for handouts, we're asking for modernization. Thank you very much.